Hi, I'm eating dinner. It's tasty. It's steak over white rice. I don't know if the mic's picking up, but I got the chat over here. I can see what's going on in the chat. We're going to sit here and uncomfortably watch me eat for a minute or two because I'm hungry and I just got home. We're going to close that door behind me as well here in a minute. Oh, God, that's good. This is a leftover steak I bought way too fucking much of. God. It's amazing. Oh. Washing it down with a lukewarm beverage. Because apparently ice isn't a thing we have in this house. I'll be with you in a moment.
The kids used all the ice.
I don't care what kids do. I'm eating. I'll be with you in the morning in a moment. I'm eating right now. But I said we were starting at 7. And we started at 7. I'm just eating. Oh, there's definitely gravy over this. There's a good amount of gravy over this. Huge amount of gravy. It's the first meal I've ate today. You know, I had shit I was doing the rest of the day. Oh. My darling spouse is sitting over there watching me eat. As I get ready to talk to you all. Once I've shoveled enough of this food into my mouth. We're almost to the end of the bowl. Don't worry. I'm sure you're enjoying all my mouth noises, though. Oh, I get closer to the mic for this last bite. God damn, that's good. Oh, sweetie, thank you very much. This was delicious.
No.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It's Boozy here for a Front Porch Stream. Obviously not on the front porch, so we can turn that back on now.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. That's what keeps this room cool.
it is.
God damn, that was good. So, it's time for a Front Porch Stream, though obviously not from my front porch, because we ain't at that point of trash yet. We're getting there, though. I'm going to answer one of the questions that somebody, one of our Patreon people, asked me. Because I put it out there, I said, hey, if you're a Patreon supporter, considering I am falling behind on doing everything else, please send me a Patreon question and let me answer it for you on stream. One of them asked, do you ever intend to do this on your front porch? And yeah, now that I own the house, I'm going to trash it up. Like, we're going to set it up on the front porch. I'm going to have fucking blow up animals. Hire a mariachi band. Get a fursuiter out here to parade up and down the block while we're streaming. Oh, many fursuiters.
I was going to say, fursuiter?
I've still got something in my teeth.
No, the way you were scarfing that down.
I just got to get it out of my teeth. Well, that's what we are. There are things over on that table there that QM is going to hand me here in a moment before they turn back on my humidifier / fan so I can breathe for the next 2 hours. And then go upstairs as the baby is walking downstairs to locate them at this moment while they're not listening to me because the phone's up. But, you know.
I'm listening to you.
We're on the same page here. Because here comes the child that I just mentioned.
Yes, I'm aware. I was actually
There it comes.
I was actually texting one of our other children to come get.
Okay, we're not going to do this all night, so what's going on?
I just didn't know where you guys were, so I just checked down here.
Okay. Well, if Ben's on his way down here, tell him it wasn't the baby.
I need to stop this thing from turning itself off so I can, see the chat. I guess that goes into battery settings. Is that what that is? I've got my laptop up over here. I'm sorry. I know this isn't the most exciting beginning to a stream. We're still kind of getting shit together on how this works. Every now and again, is it under display settings? No, it's not under display settings, so it must be under my power settings, right? That's how it works. If it's not under one, it's under the other. Jesus Christ, can this thing be fucking any more annoying right now? Battery. Maybe it is under battery settings. Maybe I'm just a moron. Maybe I need to go to change battery settings, see which apps drain your battery life, display, sound, power, and sleep. There we go. On battery power, PC goes to sleep after. I probably just want to have it on never. Is that an option? Yeah, never. And I definitely don't want it to go to sleep on me if I don't pay attention to it in 15 minutes. I'll change those back later. So there we go. First front porch stream in the house since we purchased it from the Badger Basement Studios, which are looking pretty fucking raggedy. If you've never been to a front porch stream before, let me tell you how these go. All right, the whole idea behind the front porch stream is it's something that we hearken back to in my childhood, where neighbors would get together, they'd sit on their front porches or in their backyards or stand in the center of the street, and they would talk. They would talk about things going on in the neighborhood. They would talk about things going on in the world. They would talk about things going on wherever they were, whenever they were, however they were. They would sing songs. They would tell jokes. They would tell stories, and it's something that I I personally have missed as I've grown up and moved to the cold, unfeeling north, where people are more likely to greet you with fuck you than howdy y'all. So, I'm bringing them back in a virtual form for me and for you, and I've been doing this for a couple years now, although, to be frank, I fucked up and I ain't done it in a while. And tonight's topic is going to be history and houses. We're going to talk about history and we're going to talk about houses. And the reason I chose that topic is very, very simple. The house that we are in right now, the cellar I am sitting in, the bricks, the river bricks that are in the wall across from me were put in place by the second cousin of Abraham Lincoln. That's right, the second cousin of Abraham Lincoln built this house, owned the land, built the house, moved his son into it who lived here. There's a letter in the Historical Society in our town that shows they sent him the information on that, and that Lincoln and him actually got together, at least through letters, and stated, yeah, the man you remember as your Uncle Abraham is most definitely my grandfather. So that is the history of the house. This house was built by a cousin of Abraham Lincoln. Somebody in the chat asked, has anybody died in your house? This house is almost, if not over 150 years old. Yes, somebody's died in this house. I guarantee somebody may have died right where I'm sitting. I don't know, but I guarantee you that over that period of time, oh look, my pimping's up. Over that period of time, someone has died in this house. By the way, if you like the shit we do here, throughout the stream tonight, you're going to see down below, there's going to be a little link to our Streamlabs, streamlabs.com/Boozy Badger or boozybadger.com. You can slide a tip into the bank account there. Don't worry about it too much. I think I've only got it set up to pop up for like 45 seconds every 10 to 15 minutes or something. So it's not going to interrupt anything. But yeah, so this house was built by Abraham Lincoln, which isn't the first Lincoln connection I have. The first Lincoln connection I have is the city I grew up in, Louisville, Kentucky, actually has a cemetery in its east end that has the grave of one Abraham Linkhorn there. Linkhorn, Linkhorn. That is actually Abraham Lincoln, not President Abraham Lincoln, but President Abraham Lincoln's grandfather, who he was named after, who was the uncle of the gentleman who built this house. That cemetery is reputedly haunted. It's an old pioneer cemetery. And you drive out to it when you're young and in Louisville and bored and you have a bunch of stupid friends. You pile into a car and you drive to this historical cemetery that's in the ass end of nowhere. And you go in there and you see if the spirits attack you. The spirit is Abraham Linkhorn, who was actually, by legend, killed by a native tribe in the area for impugning and impinging upon their land at that point in time during an attack back in those days where there were all those battles over areas of land like that. Now, the most amazing part of it is not that I am living in a house that is built by Abraham Lincoln's second cousin, and not that I grew up in the town where Abraham Lincoln's grandfather was buried. The most amazing point for me is that somebody back in that time period couldn't spell the word Lincoln. Linkhorn? Linkhorn sounds like the name of a bull furry. It does not sound like the name of a president's grandfather. But we should be thanking ourselves that that spelling did not stick around, because President Abraham Lincoln, definitely a furry. Definitely a furry. And it wasn't follow score. And he didn't look at the Emancipation Proclamation and go, oh, whoa, what's this? Notices your people in bondage. Pausing to let the otter stop laughing. So, a couple people have commented on the fact that I now have a Dulcimer beside me, and I do. It's not really a Dulcimer. I didn't buy the Dulcimer. I was talking yesterday about buying a $500 McSpadden lap Dulcimer. What I got instead was I got the Seagull Merlin, which is essentially a Dulcimer. Hold on. It's more of a strum stick, to be honest. It really is. It's a strum stick. And I like playing the Dulcimer. I haven't played the Dulcimer in a while. My last Dulcimer I actually pawned to pay a utility bill while we were in law school. So this is a big deal for me. The problem is it's not what I'm used to playing, so I've got to teach myself how to play it again, which is like, hold on, let's see. I fucked up right off the bat. I was fine. Then I started talking to you. You fucked me up, people. Thank you. That's actually a song. It's a song called Boil Them Cabbage Down. That sounded good. You should go check on that.
I'm heading, but I have to be careful because there's cords everywhere.
You could walk in front of the camera.
Well, I don't want to show my butt to the camera.
You show your butt to me all the time. Close that door behind you. I'm going to turn on, give me a second, I'm going to turn on a couple things here so that I can be comfortable. Because no one ever cares about my comfort. Everybody's all like, oh no, don't let the children destroy the house. Oh. So that's the first thing that we're talking about. Now I'm kicking my shoes off. I like this area, by the way. This is our new little Badger Den studio. This weekend, you can't see it. If you tune into the Twitch streams, you certainly can see it. There is all along the walls a bunch of pitting and stone where the mortar has fallen off over the years. And I'll be making up some mortar mix this weekend and patching those walls to smooth them out to paint them. Then I'll be filling in parts of the floor. I'm not going to level it. It does slant a little, but fuck it. We'll live. I'm going to paint off the floor. I'm going to paint this ceiling, and I'm going to paint this area behind me. That is all provided for this weekend, hopefully. I say hopefully because I've got to paint in the kitchen tomorrow as well. That's going to be something that we are doing. Who cares about your comfort, by the way, was Captain Abraham Lincoln. There's no mention of Lincoln anywhere. That's because his name wasn't Lincoln. They misspelled his name on his gravestone. Don't come at me with Abraham Lincoln facts. I know them. I know them all. I've been to the grave. I'm just saying. I've been there. I've seen it. I know what it says, and I know who's buried in the ground below it. Yeah, I know. If you haven't watched in a while, you're probably saying, Boozy, you quit smoking. And I did. I did quit smoking. I most certainly did quit smoking. However, it's something that happens. And there goes another bang upstairs. Do you believe Timothy Beckwith is a legitimate descendant of Abraham Lincoln? Maybe. The fact of the matter is the descendants of Abraham Lincoln are very few and far between, because only one of his sons really lived into adulthood. And then, let me see. Hold on. Now, I could have sworn they actually resolved whether Beckwith was a legitimate descendant of Lincoln or not. Let's see. The middle shelf has fun. The middle shelf is actually very well supported. Claimed by Hoffman to be the son of her husband, Robert Todd Lincoln Beckwith, to make Beckwith the great-grandson and the only living descendant. Hey, I don't know. Let's see. His mother grew up in Hanover. After 6 months of marriage, Beckwith received a letter indicating that his wife was pregnant. However, Robert had a vasectomy. Like, hasn't there been a... Did anybody ever do a paternity test? Did they ever actually do a paternity test to determine whether he was or not? I mean, like, it's 1985 when all this was done. You would think that that's something that could have been done. I don't know. I mean, it certainly does make sense. I mean, legally, he's the last living heir of Abraham Lincoln. So the South had been problematic to the Lincolns 2 generations before he was shot. Well, yeah. Yeah. You see the Lincoln mistake to get money? No. Or maybe we do, provided we have recordings of what he says. Careful when painting. Don't want to have our favorite Badger high on paint fumes. Let's see. As far as I know, there hadn't been a fraternity test. Yeah, I haven't seen one either. I was looking it up to see that. I thought they, whatever it was, house that was by law. Questionable authority. Are you referring to a certain house in New York? Is that what you are referring to? The very famous legal case that declared the house was, for purposes of the need to disclose conditions, haunted. That's what I want to know. Was that the house? It's the only one I can think of where they declared a house to be legally haunted. Oh, I can't remember the name of that case, though, and I should. I've written about it. It's actually a very, very famous Stambovsky v. Ackley. Thank you. So you were in front of the Ackley house. Well, congratulations on your connection to legal history. Now, I'll tell you my connection to legal history. There's a very old court opinion in Pennsylvania. It's called the Borough of Nantiglow. And what it states is that on a motion for summary judgment, the deposition, testimony, or affidavit of the witness for the party moving for summary judgment cannot be the sole base of support for such a motion. There has to be other support there for the motion to be granted. So you can't, like, Bob sue somebody, Bob gives testimony in a deposition or an affidavit saying this happened, and then Bob moves for summary judgment and wins based solely on his testimony with nothing else. That is called the Borough of Nantiglow. We call it the Nantiglow Rule. There is, in Pennsylvania, a Borough of Nantiglow. It is where that came from, and it is on the way to Pittsburgh, the way I drive to Pittsburgh, at least, which avoids the ungodly terror that is the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I make special trips to Nantiglow, Pennsylvania, solely to take pictures by the sign saying, "Welcome to the Borough of Nantiglow," and send them to my law school classmates and other attorneys I know so they can curse at me. That is what I do with my time, because I'm an interesting person. Speaking of legal history, I promised you a little bit of history tonight. And the first thing I want to talk about history-wise is Howe and Hummel. If you don't know who Howe and Hummel were, there's actually a really good book out there about them. But it was two lawyers. It was Bill Howe and I believe Abraham Hummel. And both of them, we're talking like turn-of-the-century attorneys. We're talking attorneys in 19th century, early 20th century New York, which tells you at that point how the bar was situated at that point, because Bill Howe, who was born in 1828 in England, in the United Kingdom, he was British, appeared in New York and admitted himself to the bar as a trial attorney. He was a trial attorney for a number of years, really up until his death at that point. But the circumstances of how he left New York or how he left England have always kind of been under suspicion. Because there's a good chance that William Howe was actually an abortionist who was escaping the law when he left England to come to New York to be an attorney. He was a very fanciful man. He gave blistering oratory. He was known for his quick wit. He was known for courting the press. He liked the press to know all about him. He wore diamond cravats and gave emotional appeals to juries. And he was quite likely the scummiest man on the face of the earth. He did almost solely criminal defense. He set up his firm directly across from the Tombs, which at that point was the New York City prison. And people would come in and pay him. There was one point where they said every madam in the city of New York was represented by him. There were numerous questionable dealings, and that is very clear from the person who became his law partner, Abraham Hummel. Now, Abraham Hummel, who unlike Howe, was not a corpulent, flashy, verbose publicity hound, was actually a small, quiet man. He dressed conservatively. He headed up the firm's civil side. He loved theater. He loved theater. Every big star in the theater in New York was a client of Abraham Hummel of Howe and Hummel. Except for the whole thing where they would use Howe's clients, the madams and such, to set up wealthy theater producers to have affairs and then would take those same theater producers, and Hummel would represent the theater producers or the prostitutes that Howe was representing, and they would basically blackmail the theater producers. They would blackmail them. This went on for a long time, just like an inordinately long period of time. This is a fun little story there. Yeah. Mark Whipple actually said, wasn't this fellow who almost got every murder in New York State released on technicality? He did. He had a murder trial, and in defending his client, he argued that the law for murder, due to a legislative error, was invalid. And they upheld him. They basically said, oh, he's right. And somebody, I think, came to their senses at one point and basically said, no, we're not going to release every murderer in the state of New York. But man, that was a great lawyer. That really was. I'm reading something. I have their book. There is a book. It's called Scoundrels at Law. And I love that book, Scoundrels at Law. I really do. It details the sordid history of Howe and Hummel. It does it in a very nice way. But I'm looking at the Cliff Notes right now, a.k.a. Wikipedia, to refresh my memory on things. This is what I'm talking about. At one point, all 74 madams rounded up in an 1884 purity drive named Howe and Hummel as their legal counsel when they were questioned. At one time, the firm represented 23 out of the 25 prisoners awaiting trial for murder in the city's Tombs prison, and had an undeclared interest in the 24th, meaning they were considering representing all but one of the murderers who were going on trial in New York City at one point. I almost want to read this verbatim. And Edward Unger confessed that he had killed a lodger, cut up the body, thrown parts of the body in the East River, and sent the rest of it in a box to Baltimore. It's always Baltimore for some reason. Why do chopped up bodies always just appear in Baltimore? I ask you this as a person with friends in Baltimore. Why is your city the dumping ground for dead bodies? Mr. Howe stupefied the court by dramatically denying Unger had done anything. After he confessed, his lawyer went and said, he didn't do it. Yeah. Oh, you got a confession? Fuck you. He didn't do it. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. He didn't do it. And he increased the surprise by asserting that Unger's 7-year-old daughter had actually murdered and chopped up the people and mailed their bodies to Baltimore. 7-year-old daughter. He then, when he made this argument, made sure the 7-year-old was in the courtroom and bouncing on her father's knee. So this guy brought a little girl into the courtroom, put her on his client's knee, and said, "Okay, look like a doting dad. Look like you love your kid. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know they said he confessed, but fuck you, he didn't. You know who chopped up their bodies? The 7-year-old. The 7-year-old. They insulted her dolly. They did not want to play tea party. She chopped them up and mailed them to fucking Baltimore." Then, while people were sitting there in amazement, I assume, in amazement at the pure audacity of saying that little Susie wasn't playing jumping jack, she was jumping jack and cutting him to pieces, turned around and made an emotional plea that said his client, driven by fatherly love, had taken the rap and confessed to prevent any harm befalling his daughter. At the end of the day, his client was convicted. His client, who had confessed to killing a man, to cutting up the body, to throwing parts in a river, to mailing the rest to Baltimore. and then had the pure audacity to say it wasn't me, it was my darling, innocent child, was convicted of manslaughter. Not of murder, of manslaughter. Manslaughter is the killing of another, but without intent to kill them. He chopped a man up and mailed him to Baltimore. Oh. Now, this went for a long time. These guys went on for a long, long time. Howe actually, at one point, was convicted, I believe, of bribing a jury. He served about 18 months and then returned to the practice of law. Because, the fucking early 20th century New York law, Wild fucking West, baby. Howe did die. He died, in 1902. 1902. About 5 years later, after his death, the firm did then completely collapse. It collapsed because quiet, stoic little Hummel was convicted of suborning perjury, which is encouraging people to lie on the stand, and sentenced to a year in jail. After he left the practice of law, rather involuntarily, Hummel, Abraham Hummel, then went to Paris and lived the rest of his days as a genteel man of the theater in Paris. And that, folks, is the story of Howe and Hummel, the most notorious law firm in the history of New York City. As I said earlier, there's a wonderful book about that. It's called Scoundrels at Law. You can certainly get it. It's by Richard Revere. It's a great book. There's also the True and Scandalous History of Howe and Hummel from 1948. By the way, Howe actually did write like a guide to the city of New York for visitors. And he wrote it in a very clever way. The way he wrote it was telling them to stay away from dens of iniquity and sin that would drag them in and turn them out and pervert them, and telling them that so they would know exactly what dens of sin to stay away from. He described them and gave their exact address and price lists, just so the visitors would be aware of exactly what they needed to avoid. It was in no way a guide to the brothels and gambling dens and opium dens of New York City at that point in time. That's a really clever way to do it. Now, legal history is a fun thing. And normally by now I'd be like singing, but I don't have any of my lyrics up right now. Like I can bring them up, but you all don't want to hear me sing anyways. You want to hear me fuck around on this thing again? Let's fuck around on this thing again. Hold on. Listen, I'm still learning how to play this, because like I can play the Dulcimer, but... By the way, actually how you play Dulcimer, you just strum it. Yeah. I really should not quit my day job with this. I just like it. I like it. It's my comfort thing. I'm still going to be learning how to play it, hopefully much better. I'm much better with an actual Dulcimer than this. What key is in? Oh yeah, it's DAD. You tune it to D. Hold on. You see, the way the dulcimer would be played, if it was a lap dulcimer, I'd be playing it like this. I'd have something called a noter right here, and I'd be... Actually, I'm doing it with my stupid hand right now. But that's how you play it. This is kind of interesting because you get to do it like this. So, well, hold on, let's see if I can still do boil them cabbage. I mean, I'm going to have to get better at this. It's a new instrument, really. It is a dulcimer, but only as a strum stick. They're amazingly easy to play, though. You should look at them. They're called the Siegel Merlins. Frankly, I really want a... what's the difference between a strummer and a normal one? The normal dulcimer, the mountain dulcimer, it's a lap dulcimer. It wouldn't look like this. It'd have the full body. It'd be normally oval-shaped or hourglass-shaped. Have the full body with the frets. Frets would be up through there, going down the full length. There'd be sound holes right about here and here, and you would set it on your lap. And I can't do it with this because it's backwards, but the double drones, the double strings right there, those would be the melody strings, and they'd be up here. And then these are called the drone strings. You see. That would be that. And then you would generally, instead of me moving my finger, I'd have what's called a noter. And the noter is just, it's a thin dowel stick that you put on the melody keys. You move up and down, and then you strum. Like that. So, that's the difference. It is a little bit different to get used to strumming up and down and used to melody or doing the melody like this. This is actually going to be a lot more useful for learning the chords that we played on your normal DA tuned dulcimer, which I never really did, simply because it's going to help me learn the fingering positions a little bit better, and I like to finger. I like this. I really do enjoy playing the dulcimer. It's one of my happy time things. I like it. Oh man. So where's that song? I always say we're gonna sing a little during these streams because I like to sing, but I have to make sure, since it is YouTube, that I am singing non-copyrighted songs whenever I'm doing it. Because, otherwise, we're fucked. That's how you get copyright strikes. That's how you do what I did to Kage, and you go to his house and you sing a song, and you fuck it up by doing that. Boozy, is that a period correct piece for the 1860s? Not this piece. This is not. The lap dulcimer, yes. Yes, the lap dulcimer is. The lap dulcimer is actually an Appalachian instrument. It was called the lap dulcimer, the box dulcimer, the church dulcimer. That is a period-appropriate piece for the 1860s, depending on what region you are in. It was actually more based off of the zither than anything else. It was brought over by German immigrants. Believe it or not, when I was working on a master's in American history, one of the areas of study I had was the immigration of Germans, German immigrants, into Palestines, not Palestinians, Palestines, into the southern Appalachian mountain range, and something that I have said to some people are like, oh, the southern Appalachians, that's all Scots and Irish, and I'm like, no, there was a hefty number of German immigrants in the southern Appalachian mountain range from the early 1800s all the way through. They did move out of the area. They did move away from the area, but that culture did go down there. On it, it's a really nice area of study. I've actually seen. I read a little bit of German. Specifically because I studied that area, I read a little bit of German. You can actually find the old shopkeepers' books. They're in historical societies and stuff that are written in German. It's the credit books on that. So it's actually a very interesting thing there. So let's see if I can actually sing this one. This is it's a World War II song. Oh, World War II. Yes, World War II. It's a World War II song from the 1860s. There was a time traveler. He had a pen and some sheet music. It's the only thing he brought back with him. Some sheet music. This is a Union Civil War song. It is called Lincoln and Liberty Too. It's really simple. Hurrah for the choice of the nation, our chieftain so brave and so true. We'll go for the great Reformation, for Lincoln and Liberty too. We'll go for the son of Kentucky, the slavercrat's giant he slew. Then shout for the freedom preferring, for Lincoln and Liberty too. Our Davids could sing as unerring, the slavercrat's giant he slew. I fucked it up already. We'll go for the son of Kentucky, the hero of Hoosierdom too, the pride of the suckers so lucky, for Lincoln and Liberty too. Then they'll find by felling and mauling our railmakers statesmen can do, for the people are everywhere calling, for Lincoln and Liberty too. Then up with our banners so glorious, the star-spangled red, white, and blue. We'll fight till our flag is victorious, for Lincoln and Liberty too. There you go. That's the singing. Enjoy it. Or you can unmute now. I'm done. Otherwise, speaking of Kentucky, it's actually really funny. I'm from Kentucky. I'm a Kentucky native. I grew up in Kentucky. And we used to learn in Kentucky about a lot of things. Specifically, we would have classes like Kentucky history. It's like Texas, but we're not as, fucking dramatic about it. And one of the things you learn about is Kentucky is the only state in the United States to have had a sitting governor assassinated. Isn't that neat? William Goebels was the governor of Kentucky. He was elected in 1900, I think. 1900. His assassination was actually the resolution of, or part of, a long-standing issue called the New Court and Old Court disputes on that. They disputed the election. It was a very hotly contested election, and somebody shot the governor. They shot him the day before he was to be sworn into office as the governor of Kentucky. They actually called out the militia after he was shot. There was going to be like a civil war within the Commonwealth of Kentucky over this dispute. Goebels, when he was shot, was put onto his deathbed. He was sworn in. The morning of the next day, they swore him in as governor. He lived until that night. He died that night. Now, at the point that he died, all right, the New Court, Old Court dispute in Kentucky was kind of a weird thing. It was all about debt collection and bills of attainder. It was a dispute where they were saying, hey, we're going to ease the collection laws. We're going to make debts harder to collect. And the legislature did not like that. The legislature was not a fan of this. It got pushed through. The legislature tried to repeal it, but it essentially created a new Kentucky Court of Appeals, which at the point was the Kentucky Supreme Court, regarding the laws. And then there was the Old Court, which was the old Kentucky Supreme Court that was very pro debt collection. So they go in, they pass this, it goes through, and funnily enough, when they do that, when they pass that law, the old court just doesn't dissolve. It decides to stay in place. And you had this whole period of time, like years, where you had two opposite track judicial systems in Kentucky. You had one judicial system under the old court. You had one under the new court. It was so wild that the clerk of the new Court of Appeals in Kentucky, which remember was the Kentucky Supreme Court, is the body that is now the Kentucky Supreme Court. Kentucky did not have intermediate appellate systems at this time. Actually broke in with armed men to the office of the clerk of the old Supreme Court of Kentucky and stole their records so the new Supreme Court could hear the cases. Hey, this is a thing. And by the way, not unique. There are lots of incidents in American history where, like, one official body moves to a new place, like the state capital moves or the county seat moves in the other town that wasn't. It's like, we're not going to give you the records. And the new town's like, we're going to send armed men to take your records. This is a fairly common occurrence, apparently, in American history. We solved a lot of shit with guns back in the day. Anyways, back to what I was saying. That all happens. Goebbels was on the side of the new court. Eventually, by the way, the resolution of the new court, old court conflict was the old court dissolved, the new court stayed in effect. However, it was really weird because both, like, counties were like, well, if you appeal from us, you have to appeal to this court. So you had, like, two dual-track justices with completely conflicting opinions coming out from what was supposed to be the highest court of the state. And it almost evolved into civil war. Like, it came very close to being an interstate civil war within Kentucky at that point over that specific conflict, which just goes to show you, like, debt collectors ruined fucking everything. They ruined fucking everything. They tore apart a judicial system back in the 19th century, and we still let them exist. So I just want to point that out to you. Maybe we shouldn't be putting faith in that. Anyhow, back to what I was saying. Those cases actually stayed on the records. Like, it wasn't until, like, the 1930s that the Kentucky Supreme Court, which by that point was the Kentucky Supreme Court, because there were the regular courts. Then they had the appeals court, which was now an intermediary court, meaning it was a court between the lower level courts and the Supreme Court that heard appeals, which is the system they have now. They have, like, trial courts, intermediate appeal court, final appeal court. All right? The Kentucky Supreme Court in the 1930s basically said, yeah, all those old court decisions, we're throwing those out. Those don't matter anymore. Stop listening. But for a while, you had a genuine state of confusion in Kentucky law because there were like 30 to 40 years of just people going, we don't know which one to use. And you were like, they were citing opposite opinions. Like, one's from this court that was invalid and one from the new court that had to fucking steal records with guns. So, anyways, Goebel was on the side of the new court. People did not like that. That's really why he was shot. And in the midst of that dispute, in this background of Civil War, right after he's shot, General Taylor, calls up the Kentucky State Militia. And, I mean, this is right on the verge of war. Okay? This is right on the verge of war. They're getting ready to do that. All right? And they're getting ready. He had one act. As he lay dying in his deathbed, Goebbels was sworn in as governor, and his one act was to issue an order dissolving the Kentucky State Militia, thereby removing their authority to act as a lawful entity and cause what would have been a civil war. Interesting facts. When Goebbels was shot, the shots actually came from the state building, which was the state house. So there's a very real possibility that would happen. That he was assassinated as part of a political ploy by the prior governor Taylor to maintain his office due to the highly contested results of that election. Goebbels' last words were reported by newspapers as being, "Tell my friends to be brave, fearless, and loyal to the common people." However, another person uncovered a story from the same room at the same time, stating that Governor Goebel's last words were he had ate his last meal and said, "Doc, that was a damned bad oyster," and then he died. At the end of the day, with the death of Governor Goebbels, the sides calmed the fuck down. A little bloodshed, you may say, much like oil, smoothed the waters. And they decided that they were going to litigate the whole thing, the question of the contested election on it. It was actually like a whole part of it. It went in front of that. It actually was eventually appealed to and decided by the Supreme Court of the United States in a case called Taylor v. Beckham, which was the case brought by Governor Taylor, who was the person who lost the election, against Governor Beckham, who was Goebbels' lieutenant governor. And that is the story of the only governor in the history of the United States to have been assassinated while in office. Neat, huh? That's neat. I know that stuff because I'm a Kentuckian, and like I said, we're weird. We like to know these things. We like to sit here and be able to say we know a lot of weird history about our state because they make us learn it. Like I said, we're like Texans, only less problematic. Trust me, Kentucky's very problematic. We're just less problematic than Texas, okay? That's like saying we're the prettiest puppy at the ugly dog show. It's not the best thing ever. Let's go to the chat, see what the chat's saying here as we move towards the end of our first of 2 hours here. Did everyone learn how to make fried chicken? What defines the Southern Appalachians in that context? How far south? Generally, you're looking at the range that runs from Virginia down to Georgia when you're talking about the Southern Appalachian Mountain Range. Which is really weird. You know, like, the Appalachians, and they're thinking, like, deliverance and shit. But, like, the Appalachians run all the way up to Maine, guys. It's a continent-spanning mountain range. It's not just the South. It's just all the fun people are in the South, and those are the ones we talk about. Like in the North, if you go to the main area of Appalachians, you know what you fucking get? Pet cemetery. You get pet cemetery. You get, like, fucked up clowns in the woods, and if you bury something in the ground, it comes back and kills you. Okay? They're just saying. You know what you get in the South? You know what you get in the South when you do that? Maybe a little bit of butt sex. Just out in the woods, butt sexing. Anyways, let's see. What else do we have here? In Michigan, they teach us to swim and drive a boat. I had a course called shotgun maintenance in high school, so, like, there we go. Join the Front Porch Stream from my studio. Hi, Sue dear. It's great to see you here again. Speaking of which, as I'm going through the chat, there are certain questions that I have promised Patreon supporters that I would answer for them on stream tonight. We are 10 minutes away from the halfway point, so that'd be a great time for me to take a break. We got like 3 more tales of history for you tonight, or 2 or 3 more tales of history for you tonight. And now would be a great time for me to give special thanks to the Patreon supporters out there for lawyersandliquor.com. First, let me give you the names of our $5 level and above Patreon supporters. As soon as I can fucking bring them up. Come on, show me the things I need to see. Oh, you suck. You suck. You suck so bad. Come on. Oh, you still suck. There we go. Maybe that time will work. Oh. Actually, we have a little bit of Pennsylvania history for you tonight. It's a piece of Pennsylvania history a lot of people don't know about. And we'll get into that. That'll actually be the next thing we talk about, is a little bit of Pennsylvania history. as soon as this comes up and I can do the things I need to do for those people. So, wow, it always does it in this exact way, and I hate it when it does it in this exact way. Give me the thing I need. Oh my God. There we go. So, special thanks out there to Beaton, Brophy Wolf, Buddy Good Boy, Dante PD, David Hunter, Dozer, Trash Panda, Ed B. Kelly, Eddie the Weather Fox, Feck, Ghost Goat, Ginny Ann, Grace Jane Gollinger, Ian Delahorn, Jack of All Corks, Lisa Lupe, Mark Whipple, Mark Beckwar, Mark Phaedrus, Michael Blocker, Mark Mama T, Netherlinks, Nita Lewis, Pandemonium, Petrov Neutrino, Sean Rabbit, Tezcat Magic, Jag the Dragon Show, Terrence, Uncle Kage, Wayland DeRoche, Cythro, and Ziggy. So special thanks to all of you all out there. Let's turn to, though, really quickly, the Patreon questions that I did receive. All right. So, the first one is from Beaton, which is, what's your favorite thing about your new house? Thank you very much for asking, Beaton. A couple points of clarification. It is my new house, but it is not a new house for me. We've lived in this house for a number of years now. We were renting it the whole time. Over the past several years, we've been discussing purchasing this house from the former owner and my former landlord. He decided he wanted to sell it. If you've actually been a long-time follower of the streams and watch them, you know we've been trying for a couple years now to get to the point where we could purchase this home. We finally reached it. We finally got it there. So we have now. So I will say that the best part of the new house, to the extent that it is a new house in that I am owning it now, therefore it is a new house for me to own, is I own it. I don't have to worry anymore. I'm not going to get weird-ass emails on Friday at 11:38 p.m. saying, hey, I want to come by and do an inspection tomorrow at 6 a.m., make sure everything's cleaned up. I'm not going to get any of that shit. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with somebody coming in here. I don't have to deal with twice annual inspections. I don't have to deal with the borough coming in. People are like, oh, well, now you're responsible for all the maintenance, but this isn't the first house I owned. I owned a house before. We just lost it in foreclosure when I decided to go to law school because I'm a fucking moron. I had a good job and I decided to be an attorney. Well, what the shit. Anyways, yeah, they're like, well, now you're responsible for all the maintenance. I'm like, yeah, I'm used to that. It's cool. We're good. As a matter of fact, like, I would do and pay for others to do maintenance on this house whilst I was renting it just to not deal with the fucking landlord. I paid $900 to get that furnace fixed one winter because I knew the landlord would call his buddy Timmy the Idiot to come and, like, fucking put wood in it and say, it works now, and walk off. It's not a wood furnace, it's natural gas, but I'm pretty sure that what I would have ended up with was like a wood-burning stove in the basement and an instruction for all of us to sleep on pallets around it like Neolithic cavemen huddling around a fire in the midst of winter. So, I'm fine with this. But it is my house, and that is the thing that makes it the most important to me right now, is for the first time in, Jesus Christ, almost 10 years. If we don't want to leave, we don't fucking have to. Nobody can send me a notice, a 30-day notice, and say, you got to go. I want to rent it out, or I want to sell it, or I want to do something else to it, or I want to raise the rent. Nobody has the ability to do that to us anymore. We have a home. And we're paying less, like a little over $100 less a month than we were with the mortgage, we were with the rent, which we never missed a payment on, so I don't expect that to be any issue. We have some upkeep costs now that we need to get done, but if we do them right, it should be the only time we have to do them in the next 10 years. My kids have a home that they will grow up in and be secured in. There was a period of time we moved around a lot after the kids were born, after I went to law school. And now I can keep a promise I made to my children when we rented this house, which is if everything goes right, we will never move again. Because we rented it with the understanding that we would try to buy it. So I get to keep that promise, and those are the things I love most about it, is for the first time in a decade, I have a home. My family has a home But more importantly, I've lived in the back of a fucking car. I have lived in the back of a fucking car. My family has a home that we never have to leave. And thank God for that, because for the last 3 months, we haven't been able to leave it. Trust me, we've talked about this. Let's see, who's next? Is Kentucky part of the South? Tyro, you had a question here. It was, will you stream with your fursuit at all? Which one do you want me to answer? You know what? I'll answer that one on general principles, Tyro. Kentucky is sort of part of the South. We're part of the northern South. I mean, we're more southern than Virginia. Kentucky is more southern than Virginia. That's a good way to put it. Culturally, like the background and traditionally, definitely is a southern state. When you get to the northern part of the state, it's more kind of a Midwestern area. But we are very much culturally the state. Now, there is a saying like, I'm not from Kentucky, I'm from Louisville, or they're not from Kentucky, they're from Louisville, indicating that the culture is much more Midwestern up there. I am from Louisville, but my family is from the state. So that is the difference between that. But Kentucky is mainly southern. I'm just going to say it's mainly southern. It really is. Culturally, it really is. And your friend who is livid that you called Kentucky the South is living in denial. They're saying, oh no, we're really the Midwest. We're not the South. We're really the Midwest. And I'm like, yeah, because all those slave plantations of Ohio tell you a little bit, don't they? A good denominator is if you're in an area of the country where someone says the words, well, bless your heart, you're in the South. That's the South. When people stop eating muffins and start eating biscuits, you're in the South. That's the South. If someone knows the proper way to prepare grits and how to season them, you're in the South. That's the South. If you walk into Kroger's and you know where the chitlins are, and more than that, you know what the chitlins are, you're in the South. Okay? If you know more than 3 people with 2 first names, South. The amenable Uncle Kage is in the chat saying Kentucky is the faux South. But Dr. Conway, I ask a question of you, sir. Where was the Southern Exposition held? Where was the Southern Exposition held? It wasn't in Atlanta. It wasn't in North Carolina. You know what North Carolina has? Alligators and incest. And people from South Carolina trying to go home. And cockroaches. They got cockroaches too. Oh, Tyra, what are chitlins? Chitlins are, we'll get to chitlins. Lisa Lupe is the one I referenced earlier who had asked me, do you plan on doing any actual front porch streams? Do you plan on doing streams on your front porch? The answer is yes. I own the house now. And one of the benefits of home ownership is I don't give a fuck if my neighbors complain about me. So yeah, we're going to do streams on the front porch. We're just not doing them now because I need to finish this room and then finish the networking down here and then run it so I can run the networking up through that corner over there so I can put it out the window so I can connect hardwire shit up when I do it out front from this shitty laptop that you can't see because it's slightly off camera. So yes, the short answer to the long answer to your short question is what I gave. The short answer is yes. We will actually do front porch streams. I am looking very much forward now that I have this wonderful area that I will be rehabbing tomorrow or starting the rehab on tomorrow as well. Being the basement studio. I'm looking very, very forward to having people over. Hopefully the cockroach. Hopefully people like Sue Deer and Benny Tiger and Alkali. Not Pepper Coyote because I don't have that much beer and weed, as I have no weed it is illegal, and I am a good law-abiding badger. So there are those things. Let's see. What else do we have here? I have a question from Uncle Kage. Uncle Kage asks, if you had changed your mind and not gone to law school, what would you have wound up doing, and where would you likely be right now? That's a good question. It's a good question because it depends on when. If I had decided that I didn't want to pursue a higher education at one point, I'd likely still be working on the rivers. I'd probably be a deckhand, or hopefully at least a chief mate by now on a towboat somewhere. I'd make good money, but I'd be dog-tired, and I wouldn't be half as intelligent and good-looking as I am. If I had stopped, if I had in 2011 said to myself, I'm not going to take the LSAT, I likely would have continued on my master's work. I was in the midst of a thesis on American history, the areas I just spoke about. I likely would have done through that. I would have gone through my PhD. I would have thought that I would have had a good job waiting for me afterwards. I would have found out that academia does not pay as well as you think it does, especially when you're in a liberal arts social scientist sector like history. I could have been the nation's foremost expert on the German immigrants of the southern Appalachian Mountain Range from 1810 to 1840. I'm sure that would have brought in buku bucks. It's such an amazingly interesting period of American history that so many people are aware of. So that probably would have happened. If I had done it before I decided to get on my master's work, I'd likely still be working for health insurance. Right now, I'd still be working for a health insurance company right now. And I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't have met any of you lovely people. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be getting on stages and entertaining. I wouldn't be educating about law. I wouldn't be holding streams from my basement where I sing old songs. I wouldn't be doing any of that. So, in the long run, my law school was certainly a thing, and it was very stressful. It was stressful on me. It was stressful on my family. It was stressful on my spouse. While it was certainly a thing, it caused a lot of trouble. In the long run, looking at everything that I have today, a good career, the ability to perform, which I hadn't done in over a decade until the furries kidnapped me. Falling ass backwards into this wonderful fandom and finding out that there was a name for the thing that I liked when I was a kid. So many wonderful friends, so many supporters, the ability to make people smile and to raise money for charity and all those wonderful things, and to become closer as a family through it. And to meet wonderful friends like Dr. Conway, like Uncle Kade, who asked me that question. Sam, you're a wonderful friend, and I love you to the ends of the earth. I am happy that I made that decision. I'm fortunate that I made the decision to go to law school. Otherwise, my life would be likely completely different than it is now. What else do we have here? Do we have anything else? Or are those the only Patreon people who actually submitted questions? Those are the only Patreon people who submitted questions. So there we go. So we had a bit of a talk about Kentucky. You know what? We always say we sing during these things, and we're going to sing again. We're going to sing the state song of Kentucky. This is a song that every Kentuckian learns. Every Kentuckian learns. Recently, you would have seen the Kentucky Derby had it been held, and they would have sang this song then. And it would have been wonderful and beautiful, and every Kentuckian who watched it would have teared up and cried and been just so amazed at it. It's a wonderful way that brings it all together. So let's join. Stand and place your hand over your heart, please, for the national anthem of Kentucky, My Old Kentucky Home, with the revised lyrics. Please, for the love of God, never sing My Old Kentucky Home with the original lyrics. You will get hit. Oh, the sun shines bright On my old Kentucky home, 'tis summer, the people are gay. Oh, the sun top's right, and the meadows in the bloom, and the birds make music all the day. The young folks roll on the little cabin floor, all merry, all happy and bright. By and by hard times come a-knocking at the door of my old Kentucky home. Good night. Weep no more, my lady, oh, weep no more today. For we'll sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home, far away. Ah, Kentucky. I miss it. That's really, houses. It's not only history, it's houses. Houses are homes, but they're not the only places that are homes. Homes are wherever your heart goes to and where the things you love are. And in that way, I am blessed to have many, many homes. I have this home, obviously, where my family is, my children, my spouse. I have my home in Kentucky with my family and my friends there. I have my home in Pittsburgh with my family and my friends from Anthrocon. I have many homes all over this country because home is wherever the people you care about live. They are houses for your heart. Okay, we're done with that. We did our sappy shit. I'm done. I'm done being sappy now. But I want to thank you all very quickly for making sure that I have a home wherever you are by being here with me tonight. So, that said, y'all ever heard about how Washington D.C. came to be? All right, let's try it. So, in the beginning days of the country after the Constitutional Convention, the capital of the United States of America was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the President's house was located outside of Independence Hall. You can actually go to the Independence National Park, and you can see the foundations now. They dug up like the foundations of where the first President's house was, and found a lot of stuff. It's actually a really good exhibit. But you go there, and you can see all that. And that was the first capital of the United States of America, and there was this huge thing. Should the capital be in Philly? Should the capital be in New York? Should the capital be somewhere in between? Like New York wanted to be the capital, but Philadelphia wanted to be the capital. And there was this huge thing going on there, because like in the early days of the country, while the Declaration of Independence may have been done at Philadelphia, the capital moved a lot. Like at one point, the Continental Congress was based near me, near where I am right now. Met there, and they met all these other places. So, anyways, the Constitution is written. Sorry, I'm putting my leg up now. The Constitution is written. The Constitution is ratified. Amongst the things that happened when the Constitution was written and was ratified was they imposed a tax. They imposed a tax on the production of whiskey. Whiskey was apparently very important during colonial American times and thereafter, immediately following the Revolution. It was a symbol of freedom. Matter of fact, when George Washington fell on hard economic times, you know what he did at Mount Vernon? He plowed over the goddamn tobacco because it was leaching the soil. He put up corn and wheat, and he made whiskey. So, the Congress decides as a source of revenue, they are going to tax whiskey. And this went over about as well as you would expect, because everybody today, when they tax you, just says, oh, well, I guess it's fundamental for the operation of our country and the maintenance of our military and government programs and the support of our federal government, which holds us all together in a single unit body. Or, they solved problems like we discussed how many early American problems were solved with fucking guns. With fucking guns. They solved it with fucking guns. Like the history of America is, oh, we have a political issue, break out the guns. Anyways, so a bunch of ex-soldiers got together and said, oh, you're going to tax our whiskey? Fuck you, we're going to march on Philadelphia. These people are from Ohio. Fuck Ohio, because Ohio deserves to be fucked. So anyways, These soldiers get up in arms in Ohio. They're all like whiskey distillers. This is like the Moonshiners Rebellion, okay? Not the Moonshiners Rebellion of like the 1920s with the cool cars and the fancy hats and the speakeasies and Al Capone and shit. Not really a Moonshiners Rebellion. More of a kind of free-for-all for organized crime. Anyways, though, these guys get together in Ohio and they're going to march on western Pennsylvania. And the Continental Congress is sitting there. Now, they have a standing army, but their standing army kind of fucking sucks. I mean, just it kind of fucking sucks. It's a loosely bound militia that's now, they're not really sure how that's going to work. So, they don't really have a standing army anymore. The standing army's gone. It's just like some fuckheads with muskets. And the Continental Congress turns to, I shouldn't even say Continental Congress, I should just say the First Congress. The First Congress turns to the government of Pennsylvania and says, hey, so, small thing, not a big deal, just gonna need some help. We pissed off a lot of people in Ohio. They got guns and they're marching here to kill us. So if you could call up your militia to stop them, that'd be great. The national government would be really, really happy. And the governor of Pennsylvania was like, fuck you, I like to drink. So he didn't call up the militia. The militia of Pennsylvania didn't get called up. And there is now an army of pissed off drunks with guns marching from Ohio. And we all know the Ohio drunks are the worst drunks. Marching from Ohio onto the capital of the United States in Philadelphia. Now, luckily, that whole thing got resolved. That whole thing got resolved. The National Army got called up. The whiskey tax was negotiated. It went away. It went away. But it got the Congress to thinking. They thought, where we are without a strong National Army and really no power to bring the National Army into this state to do things, we sort of are fucked. If Pennsylvania decides they don't like us, we're sort of fucked. So, you know what we really need to do? You know what has to happen? By the way, thank you, Obscurity Leopard. I can see you from over here. So, you know what we need to do? We need to set it up so that doesn't happen again. And what's the best way to set it up so that doesn't happen again? We're gonna start our own fucking city. We're gonna start our own fucking city on the border of Virginia and Maryland. And why was it in Virginia? Because Thomas Jefferson wanted it to be in Virginia. As a matter of fact, when you hear the stories about how Washington, D.C. was actually purchased and planned and bought, it was bought specifically so the federal government, and the reason why it is still a federal district and has no rights as a state whatsoever, although some of that has been done, is under the sole purview of the United States government, of the federal government, is specifically because it all traces back to the Whiskey Rebellion and the refusal of the government of Pennsylvania to protect the Congress at that time. They needed a district the federal government had exclusive control over. Okay? So anyways, why was it where it was? Well, if you've ever seen the play Hamilton, you may, or if you're familiar with the play Hamilton, or anything like that, you may know about the Federal Reserve and the Federal Bank. The National Bank was a plot by Alexander Hamilton to buy up debt obligations of the United States of America so that it could extend credit or be extended credit by other nations. It was considered a huge issue. It was a federalism issue. The superiority of the United States government, broadening the scope past the boundaries of the Constitution. And that was one of Hamilton's views. We need to do this. We need to do this so we as a nation can have credit. And yes, it involves giving the federal government power it never had before, but it's necessary. And Thomas Jefferson was an anti-federalist. He hated that. He was a states' rights guy. States' rights, which meant then really states' rights. It meant like the sovereignty of the state over something else. By the way, we'll talk about that later, because that view changed for Jefferson. Jefferson did not always have that view, and he did not always keep that view. But anyways, he was massively against it. And those two guys, both of them on Washington's cabinet, fought. They did not like each other. These assholes did not like each other. Anyways, they meet together with James Madison, future president of the United States as well, and they sit there and they talk, and no one really knows what the fuck happened in that room. No one knows what happened in that room, but when they walked out, Alexander Hamilton had the National Bank, and Thomas Jefferson had Washington, D.C. going into Virginia, which was part of the Southern issue. So it was putting the national capital on a Southern state. Like on the border of a Southern state, right there within the control of the South. And that would influence American politics in Washington, D.C. for years to come. Years, decades, right up until the 1860s and 70s. That would be a big influence for them. And that all came out of the simple fact that Congress decided to tax whiskey, and a bunch of pissed off drunks in Ohio's had guns in time to march on Philadelphia. Because, like, they couldn't just hop in the car. This wasn't a day drive. This was marching pretty much across 2 fucking entire states. So those guys really like to drink. And that's how that one happened. Ooh. I need a soda. Let's see. What do we have in the chat? What do we have in the chat as we roll into the last 45 minutes of this? The last non-New York capital was York, PA. Yeah, it was. The last non-New York capital under the Articles of Confederation was York, PA. But we're not under the Articles of Confederation. We're under the Constitution at that point. The Constitution placed the capital at that time was placed in Philadelphia. That is literally why we have the President's House in Philadelphia. Oh my God, they're starting to sing. They decided to put it on Malarial Swamp. Well, you know. Because if it wasn't the Southern Citizens complained, like they did for everything back then, 2 Virginians and immigrant walked into the room diametrically opposed. Okay, Beaton, please stop going through that. I'm watching Beaton. He's singing. He is singing out that right there. Oh. 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 Anyways, what else can we talk about? You all ever heard the story of Timothy Dexter? You ever heard the story of Timothy Dexter? The man who could not fail but to fail upwards? We'll get to that. We will get to the story of Timothy Dexter, but let's turn to the chat. Let's see what the chat has to say for a moment. Most of the U.S. was malarial swamp or something equally disgusting at that time. I mean, like, yeah, except Boston. Boston wasn't a malarial swamp, but it was Boston. But Boozy, today if you buy whiskey, there's a tax on it. That's because we as Americans have lost our grit, and also Ohio's gone soft. AKA Lisa Lupe, if I'd had a history teacher like you in school, I would have done better on history. Guys, history is fucking amazing. I don't know why more people aren't interested in history. I was what you call a socio-political historian. The 2 areas of history that I studied was social, cultural matters, and political matters, and how they would intersect. All right, there's a lot of different types of historians out there. I mainly focused on social and political history. But history is fucking amazing. Doesn't change. It's staying. We may not know everything about it, but it's not going to change. What has happened has happened. All right? B, you get to look into so many different time periods and so many different things about those time periods and how so many different things came together. You get to learn about that stuff, and that's just amazing. Like, I have sat there with journals of people in like the 1830s talking about mundane things in the neighborhood. It's like being a voyeur from across 100 years. It's great. And you get to read that shit. You get to see that shit. You get to go through that shit. And you get a perspective on it. And you get to read other people's interpretations of those perspectives and form your own perspectives. And then you dig through shit. Like at the end of the day, you're digging into shit. You're digging into documentary evidence. You're digging into battle plans. You're digging into letters from Bob to Tina. And nobody knows who the fuck Bob and Tina were. Nobody knows them. Bob and Tina lived normal lives. Bob and Tina weren't anybody special. Maybe Bob was a farmer and Tina was a shop girl. Nobody knew them outside of their immediate circle, but their letters survived and provided context for the days and how people were talking and what was going on at the time period. Now they're amazingly important sources, and you get to learn these things. You get to learn these things and discover these things and interpret these things and form theories about these things and try to find new ways of looking at them. And they're all stoic. It's why they always say you can't actually begin a historical perspective of something until 20 years after it's passed, because it's now being removed from a point where it's being viewed subjectively by everybody who experienced it. It can be viewed sort of on an objective scale, where the documents that you need to view it objectively are probably becoming available to us. It's a beautiful concept. Like, think about it, all right? What we go through right now, the major events happening right now, and the email or the tweet you send about it, or the thing you post in a chat room, if a log of that survives, can be used 100 years from now as a primary source of expressing how segments of your population felt about that issue at the time. Because you are a contemporary source. You are a primary source. The documentation we make today will inform the generations of tomorrow, and not even our intentional documentation, not even the stuff that we intend to write down for posterity, all right? But the letters we send people, the emails we send people, the things we write on our blogs, this stream could be a primary source 60 years from now if somehow a copy of it were to survive. Isn't that amazing? And I've sat there, I've seen these things. I've like the Filson Historical Society in Louisville, Kentucky. I used to go into their reading room, and I would sit down there and I would tell the archivist, hey, I need to see this part of this collection from this date to this date. And they would bring out these stacks of letters, and I would get to thumb through them. Like, I have held in my hand a letter written by Abraham Lincoln. Like, not in my hand, like in my gloved hand through a protective sheet, because it's fucking Lincoln. But still, the point remains. And it's so amazing. Like, I sit in this basement right now. I'm looking right across from me. I see the stones in that wall. I can see where some of the stones, as it went up, got replaced with brick. And I'm going, those stones are over 150 years in that location. Those stones have been there that long. How amazing is that? Those stones were placed by the hands of somebody long dead. Maybe they were a laborer at the furnace that this town was built around. Maybe it was Abraham Lincoln's cousin himself. Who knows? But I'm sitting in history right now. And that's the amazing part of it. That's the great part of it, is you sit there and you put yourself in that mindset. Oh, sorry. You got me history geeking. And I love it. I love history geeking. Let's see what the chat says right now. Oh, man. I really... Let's see. History is written by the winner. History is a bias. Anyways, so I was saying about Timothy Dexter. Timothy Dexter could not help but fail. He really could. Timothy Dexter was born in colonial America. He was born in about 1747. He was born in a town called Malden, Massachusetts. All right. He was not an educated person. By the way, DeSolto, thank you very much for going to streamlabs.com/BoozyBadger or BoozyBadger.com and tipping the Badger. I appreciate it. So anyways, he was born in Malden, Massachusetts. Timothy Dexter was in school very briefly. They say that he probably dropped out of school somewhere around the age of 9 or 10, around that, and worked on a farm as a general laborer. Not even his family's farm, just a farm. He was an apprentice, I think, leather worker at some point. But anyways, at about the age of 23, 22, somewhere in there, he moves to Newburyport, Massachusetts, where he meets a 32-year-old widow by the name of Elizabeth Frothingham. Now, Frothingham is rich. Frothingham is about a decade older than him, but Frothingham is loaded. And you know she's got to be loaded because her name was Frothingham, which, just gonna be blunt, sounds a little dirty. It sounds a little dirty. You know, who are you? I'm the widow Frothingham. So he meets her, he seduces her. Because apparently, this elementary school dropout who worked on farms has a little bit of game. Doesn't have any money, but he's got a bit of game because he seduces a rich widow. He marries the rich widow, and he just immediately starts spending the fuck out of her money. He buys a mansion. He starts building things. He goes in. He starts acting like he was born into the society that had a lot of wealth, and like his contemporaries are like, who the fuck is the guy who dropped out of elementary school? So anyways, he lives through the Revolutionary War. He's a bit of a patriot. There's not a lot about him being like a founding father or a huge supporter of it. But he's a bit of a patriot. And whether you knew this or not, at the end of the Revolutionary War, colonial dollars were worth jack and or shit. They were worth nothing because the federal government had a wonderful idea during the war as the value during the war of the colonial dollar. It jumped back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but almost always going down against the British sterling and the British pound. And the reason for that is nobody thought the colonies would win. Nobody's really sure the colonies would win, and the colonial government was very, very short on actual metal to do this. Good night, Eddie. Was short on actual metal to back their currency. So, end of the war, dollar values don't go up because, the colonial government is still short on metal. Like, there's no reparations coming in yet. So, Dexter, a lot of people start buying, like, the colonial dollars for, like, pennies on the dollar. As a way to kind of give money to these colonial soldiers. I shouldn't say Frothingham. Dexter's no different. Dexter's like he sees other people do. He's like, I'm going to do that. I have money. I have much money that I have inherited from this woman named Frothingham that I am banging. Like Timothy Dexter is colonial America's gigolo. He's colonial America's, like, fucking gold-digging gigolo. That's what he is at this point. But he starts spending her money to buy up these colonial dollars. Pennies on the dollar. Pennies on the dollar, right? And not only that, but he starts buying, like, the dollars that separate state governments have been printing during that time. Same thing. Pennies on the dollar. Gets, like, gigantic amounts of this shit, right? Like, other people are looking at it as, like, we will do it as a charity thing. And, like, Dexter's like, I'm gonna get rich because I have one dime and I traded it for 2 pennies. And 2 is more than 1, so now I have more money. Right? Like, that's his logic here. He's like, I have 1 gold coin, but I traded it for lots in paper money. And lots is more than 1, so now I have more money with no concept of value. The guy is not the brightest, right? But you're going to wonder whether he really was or not. And I'll tell you why you're going to wonder this. You'll see. He buys up this money, right? It's just kind of fucking sitting here. And at some point, Congress is like, oh shit, we got to do something about all this money. Like, it's hanging out there. People are pissed. We were paying people this. We printed way too much of it. So this whole Federal Reserve thing comes up. Remember that Federal Reserve thing I talked about with Alexander Hamilton? Yeah. So one of the ways they did it, buying the debts, was they bought the debts owed by the colonial dollars and then offered government bonds at 1% of the value of what you exchange. And Dexter had a shit ton of money because Dexter negotiates like a drunken toddler. And all of a sudden, Dexter is loaded. Dexter is an amazingly wealthy... Holy shit, Nikolai! Thank you so much! I can't read your statement, but holy shit, thank you! So Dexter is amazingly loaded. He's got a lot of money now. It's all in government bonds and, like, good government bonds. And he, of course, does the reasonable thing with it. He begins, like, building statues. He builds a lot of statues. Like, all around his fucking home on marble plinths, the man has commissioned statues. And, of course, one of the statues is of himself calling himself the greatest philosopher of his time. Pretty sure he wasn't, but okay. We're going to get into that, though, because there's a dispute. He may have been a great philosopher. He may have been. So, everyone else is getting pissed. Like, everyone else really is. Like, his contemporaries are angry. Like, because they're looking at him and they're like, this man is an idiot. He is an idiot. He has no sense. He married Frothenham and got rich on dumb luck. Let us fuck with him. So they go out there and they start giving him, like these respected merchants and rich people who should know what they're doing with their money, start giving him advice on how he can become even richer, right? Like, they tell him to do things like, they're like, ship coal to Newcastle. And at that point, Newcastle was a major coal producer in the United States. So the concept of shipping coal to Newcastle, it was like, go do something worthless. For all the, like, there's a Yiddish phrase, got cock and yaffen. Go shit in the ocean. It's like, for all the good it's going to do, you got cock and yaffen. Go shit in the ocean. All right? And that was kind of like shipping coal to Newcastle. You know, for all the good it'll do, you might as well ship coal to Newcastle. Because it wasn't going to do you any good. They had enough coal. You were never going to get anything out of the concept of shipping coal to Newcastle. All right? So, this guy hears that. Somebody tells him to do that. Likely like, you know, hey. Did you know on the roof of the school there's a pool? You ought to go check it out. Like that type of shit. Like, we're going to go on a snipe hunt. Or, you know, like, pass me the butt for. Like one of those jokes. Hey, Tim, come here. Tim, sit down. I got a hot tip. Go ship coal to Newcastle. So he does, though. He buys a shit ton of coal. He sends it to Newcastle. Now, you have to remember, these were not the days of instantaneous communications, right? These were not the day of instantaneous communication. There was no, like, hop on Twitter and see information. There wasn't even, like, a telegraph. Like, you couldn't check on that shit. You made these decisions, you sent shit off, and you hoped it worked. So this guy sends coal to Newcastle. He loads up the ships, he sends them to Newcastle. The ships arrive in Newcastle. And you know, right before the ships arrive, what started in Newcastle? A mining strike. The coal producers, the miners in Newcastle went on strike and had gone on strike after the ships fucking left. So they arrive at a time when the people who sell coal to other people are paying a premium for coal so that they can meet their orders, and Timothy Dexter makes another shit ton of stupid money. Like dumb luck money. Like just massive amounts of money. And like you're like, oh, okay, well that's just one lucky thing. But it's not! It's not one lucky thing, because another time, somebody suggested that he should ship warming pans to the Caribbean. A warming pan, for those of you who aren't aware, is like a big metal pan, right? And you put coals in it, and you put the lid on it, and then you put it into somebody's bed, right? And the idea is in the colder regions, or regions where it grew colder at times of year, it would warm up the bed for them. So like if you're in, say, Massachusetts, and you have a warming pan, like 30 minutes before you go to bed, maybe you put some coals in the warming pan, close it up so it doesn't burn the fucking house down, shove it in the bed. I'm pretty sure they didn't let Timothy Dexter operate the warming pans, okay? Because there's no historical record of the house burning to the fucking ground while, like, and then him discovering there was, like, fucking a vein of gold under the burnt out foundation. So I'm pretty sure Timothy Dexter was not allowed to operate the warming pans. But anyways, you do that, you'd warm your bed up, right? So he goes, warming pans to the Caribbean. Okay, he puts warming pans on a ship. He ships them to the Caribbean. His captain gets there. Everybody's like, oh, Timothy Dexter shipped warming pans to the Caribbean. You know what they did? You know what happens? His captain looks around and goes, well, they don't need warming pans, but you know what these would make with the long handles and the shape. If you take the cover, if you take the protective lid off, you know what these would do really well for? Stirring the giant vats of molasses and cane sugar that you're making, and sold them at a premium as tools to stir up these vats of molasses and cane sugar in the Caribbean. The man shipped warming pans to the Caribbean and got rich! And it gets better, because it's not even the first Caribbean-related fuck-up. The man, got a shit ton of mittens. I don't know why. There's no record of who said, hey, Tim, you know what you should do? Sell mittens. He gets a shit ton, a shipload of mittens. He sends them to the Caribbean. Again, the guy keeps sending cold weather gear to the Caribbean. I'm sure he's like, the warming pans work. They must be really cold there. I'm going to send mittens. He sends mittens to the Caribbean. You know what happens? He arrives just as an expedition to China that actually needs mittens, that's going to sell mittens. A merchant leaving for China is in the Caribbean, buys all the fucking mittens at a premium, and takes them to fucking China to resell. Timothy Dexter gets rich again. Right? Right? And at some point in your mind right now, you're like, this motherfucker knew what was going on, but how would he know that the merchants were there? Because there was no communication. It wasn't instantaneous communication. Like the fucking cats. Oh, you didn't know about the fucking cats? Let me tell you about the fucking cats. Timothy Dexter decides, I'm going to round up all the stray cats in my town. No shit. Just basically apparently sent an order out there saying, catch a cat and bring it to me and I'll pay you. The man gets a shit ton of cats. More cats than Anthrocon holds. Puts them on a ship and sends them to the Caribbean, which I assume by this point he assumes is a magical place that just shits gold, because every time he sends something there, he gets richer. The cats get there. Stray cats. Stray fucking cats. He shipped cats to the Caribbean. The Caribbean probably has cats, but he shipped more. And you know what happens when he gets there? There's been a huge outbreak of rats. The cats get bought to kill the rats! He can't fail. He can't fail. Timothy Dexter can't fail. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows why. One day he wakes up and he's like, you know what we need to do today? We need to fill a fucking warehouse filled with whalebone. Just whalebone. We just need to buy all the whalebones we can find. He fills a fucking whalebone. A warehouse with whalebone. Right? And everybody in New England's like, whalebone? Whalebone's worthless. Nobody needs whalebone. You know what happens that year? Parisian men start wearing corsets made of whalebone and the price of whalebone skyrockets. And Timothy Dexter is sitting on a shit ton of whalebone. I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too. There is no way this man is that stupid. Something is going on here, and every time he's actually making a shrewd business decision, and everybody just thinks he's dumb. Right? Because we want to give him credit. And that would work if you didn't know about Timothy Dexter's personal life. See, Timothy Dexter married Miss Frothingham, but at some point he decided he didn't like his wife that much. So what did he do? When people would ask about his wife, he would say, nope, she's dead. And they'd be like, we see her, Timothy. We've seen her. He's like, it's a ghost. And he wasn't doing this around town. I gotta be honest. The whole it's a ghost thing, not the best defense in the first place. Even you're at the general store and hey Tim, how's your wife, the old Miss Frothingham, doing? She's dead. Oh, I could have sworn I saw her the other day. Nope, it's a ghost. That's strange enough, but he wasn't doing it like that. He was telling people at fucking dinner parties. People would be there and oh, and Tim, I see you have your lovely wife with you. My wife is dead. She's right there beside you. That is a ghost. This is the shit the guy's saying. He once, no shit, said that he wanted to see how people would grieve him when he died. So he faked his own death Like he faked his own death and didn't tell people that. Like not even his family was aware he had faked his own death. I assume he just went missing one day. Either that, well, that's a pretty big assumption. Because, like, knowing Tim, it's like he's probably like, I am going for a walk. Walked outside and said, oh no, I am dead. And walked off. I mean, knowing him, yeah, but it gets better. Because, like, they hold his funeral, right? And he's hiding behind a bush. And he looks out of the bush. And he sees the crowd of mourners. And he notices his wife, Miss Frothingham. You know, the woman that he's been telling people in their home is actually dead and a ghost because he doesn't want to acknowledge her. He sees that she is not grieving enough. I assume because she saw him in the bush, because like it was that morning, he like sat up and went, oh no, I have died, and then walked out, oh no, I have died, ooh, I'm a ghost, and walked out of the bedroom or something. She's like, oh fuck, Tim. Anyways, he thinks she's not mourning enough. So what does he do? He jumps out of the bush and beats her with his cane. Because, you know, that's how a loving relationship is, apparently, in that period of American history. Before he died, before Timothy Dexter died, and was buried in a mausoleum that he built with all of his stupid decision money. He sat down and he decided at the age of 50 that he was going to conquer the last frontier known to man. He was going to become a well-respected and published author. He was going to tell people all of the wise thoughts and secrets of the world as he saw it. So he wrote a pamphlet, 8,847 words long, to set forth his philosophy on politics, on religion, on taxes, on commerce, and most importantly, about his wife. Yeah, no, just earlier, he wrote an 8,800 word book saying, politicians suck, religion sucks, and my wife really sucks. Like, I'm glad that she's dead and she's only been a ghost for the past 30 years and shit like that. Anyways, Timothy Dexter wrote this book. And he called it, I shit you not, you can find it online still. He called it A Pickle for the Knowing Ones in a Homespun Dress. A pickle for the knowing ones in a homespun dress. His grand tome where he bitched about politics, religion, and his wife. And the best part is he couldn't spell. Like, the book is just rife with misspellings and randomly capitalized words and a complete lack of punctuation. Oh my God, he was Trump. Timothy Dexter was Trump. Trump is Dexter reincarnated. Anyways, just full of misspellings. And when, it became very popular because he printed a lot of copies and gave it out for free at first. He reprinted the book 8 separate times. And in one of the reprintings, he answered criticism that his book had a complete and utter lack of punctuation. So, in the second edition of the book, he included an appendix. The appendix consisted of one page. And that one page was 13 lines of punctuation marks with a note saying, I have included these so you may use them wherever you see fit. I cannot tell if Timothy Dexter was God's own idiot or the first troll in American history. I really, honestly can't. We have 15 minutes left. I hope you like the story of Timothy Dexter, by the way. That's actually one of my favorites. I always say, like, there are some people in this world where it's very clear that God's like, fuck it, that guy wins no matter what. Like, God's the DM, and this person has a dice that is loaded to only roll an at 20. And Timothy Dexter is one of my favorite stories as a result of that. Because it is so much, when you look at it, so much of his story is dumb luck. There's no way he could have known about the coal mine strike. There's no way he could have known about the shipper. There's no way he could have known about the rat infestations. When all these things happen, there's no way he could have known about it. It is just a guy stumbling ass backwards into luck every single time. And then he writes a book called A Pickle for the Knowing Ones. We have time for one more story. And this is legally, this is one of my favorite bits of little-known history. So, New York City, back in the early 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century, was doing a massive redevelopment project. Okay, it was the subways. Is really what they were doing. They were doing the subways. Okay, and in order to do the subways, they were seizing pieces of land all throughout the city. All right, they were condemning and taking pieces of land. One of the pieces of land they were looking at was a tenement house, an apartment house at the corner of 7th Avenue and Christopher Street in the West Village. Now, I've been there. Right now, today, I believe it is the location of the Village Cigar or Village Smoke Shop. It's actually near the Stonewall Inn. T-Max, yes, I am going to go back to not smoking here in the near future. This is really a comfort thing that started during the quarantine. It doesn't even really taste good. Like, it tastes fucking horrible. So, yes, we are going back to that. It's near the Stonewall Inn, near the Christopher Street Square and Park. It's a very nice little area, but it's a blink and you'll miss it piece of New York history. Directly in front of that is a small triangle. Now, before I tell you what the triangle says, I'm going to tell you the story. All right. The estate of David Hess. David Hess was a landlord from Philadelphia who owned property in New York, specifically an apartment building called the Voorhees, located at the corner of 7th Avenue and Christopher Street. And when New York was going through and exercising eminent domain to expand the subway and expand 7th Street, or 7th Avenue itself, I shouldn't say 7th Street, I should say 7th Avenue, because there is a 7th Street in New York and it's a completely different area. They were expanding 7th Avenue, and they were going to expand the subway. And they were exercising eminent domain and seizing like over 200 pieces of property. One of the pieces of property that New York had determined they were going to seize was an apartment building called the Voorhees, which was owned by, as we said, David Hess of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, Hess is a German name, and that's very important to know because I live in an area full of Pennsylvania Dutch, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's one thing we know about the Pennsylvania Dutch, and that is they will squeeze a penny tighter than a Scotsman. They will make Abraham Lincoln scream. They will roll it between their fingers until it's copper wire before they let it go. So David Hess was not about to let the city of New York take his fucking land for a pittance eminent domain payment. So, what did his family do? What did he do immediately? He immediately files a lawsuit and fights the city's condemnation. Now, this began in like 1910. Like 1910, 1911, somewhere in there is when they start condemning it, and the legal fights start. It goes on so long, David Hess fucking dies. His family keeps fighting him. Like, the estate's like, fuck you, man. Fuck you, New York. Which is, by the way, just very common. Like, it does not surprise me at all if Philadelphia looked at New York and was like, well, fuck you. Because that's a common thing in Philly. It's like, oh, New York, fuck them. Anyways, yo, fuck you. And that's how they kept going. And it was like the early, like, I'm sure that in 1910, the Philadelphians were like, yo, fuck you, yo. I'm sure they were like, pardon me, fornicate yourself. Anyways. So David Hess fights the hell out of this. He dies. His family keeps fighting the hell out of this. By 1913, though, they had just exhausted every single appeal. They had exhausted every bit of it. Okay? And the city ended up winning. The city ended up getting the apartment building. The city ended up tearing it down. Yeah, Nikolai. The city ended up tearing it down. And the city ended up widening 7th Avenue and building out the subway and building sidewalks and all of that. Okay? So the city of New York wins. They get what they want. And the current building there, what was now the Village Smoke Shop, was put up. And at the corner of 7th Avenue and Christopher Street, there was no longer the Voorhees apartment building. However, somewhere around 1928 or so, the estate of David Hess, the heirs who had fought for so long and lost about 15 years earlier, found out when they were charged a tax bill from the city of New York. When they received a tax bill from the city of New York, found out that the city had failed to take all of the property. What they left, and you can go and look at it, what they left was a triangle. The triangle is 25 inches on the base and 27 1/4 inches on the sides. And that had been left in the Hess family because the city of New York failed to claim it via eminent domain. And it's not like somewhere, it's right in the middle of the fucking sidewalk. This one triangle of land that the Hess family is left with. So the city of New York obviously says, oh shit, give it to us. We meant to take that, and it's so small. It's tiny. You're paying tax on it, and we got all this back tax on it, and we're going to seize it anyways because you're never going to pay the tax on something that small. Why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. Nobody would do that. Just give it to us. Just say, we'll forgive the taxes. We'll take it. We'll forgive the taxes, right? Except they underestimated the Pennsylvania Dutch because the Hess family said, "Oh, really? No. No. We remember. We remember. No. They said, hey, yo, fornicate yourself." And they went in. They paid the taxes, all the back taxes on this little triangle, and then installed a mosaic tile in the middle of it. Right? In 1922, they install a mosaic tile that reads, "Property of the Hess estate, which has never been dedicated for a public purpose." Essentially saying, this little piece of land, this is ours, and you can go fuck yourself. And to this day, the tile's still there. It actually remained in the Hess estate. The city of New York kept asking them to donate it. They refused to donate it. The tile is still there. You can go. You can see it's cracked a little, but it's still very readable. It's right there. As a matter of fact, the tile, which is the smallest plot of land in New York City, it is the smallest plot in New York City, is still in existence. It is still deeded separately. It is owned by the adjacent store, which is Village Cigars. It was sold to them in 1938. It was sold to Village Cigars, which has maintained it for an amount of $1,000, about $2 a square inch, and maintained it there. It's still there. The plaque's in place. It is still there as of last year. It has not been removed, and I hope it will never be removed. And it is known internationally as New York's Spiked Triangle, a piece of property that the owners of said, we will not, no matter how small, we will never give it to you, New York City. We're going to put a fucking plaque on it, and we're going to pay taxes on it because it's ours, and you can go fuck yourself. It still remains there to this day. You can look it up online. It's actual name. I call it the Spiked Triangle. But it's like the Bermuda Triangle, but just spiked. But you can look at it right there on there. So that'll do it. That will do it for this. I think that's the perfect story to end this stream on. Now, normally, throughout these streams, I would be having a drink. I would be enjoying a libation myself. However, I am, along with Ronnie, along with Kage, along with others, I am doing a no drink May. So no alcoholic beverage shall pass these lips during the month of May. So you're gonna have to imagine, as we do our traditional sign off from all the Front Porch Streams, that I have a glass of whiskey in my hand. And if you would please, if you have a moment, if you know the words, join me in a song that we're going to dedicate to everybody out there and to all of you as we go away. Folks, I'm going to sing the parting glass, and then we're done. Thank you. Before we do, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for seeing me through coming back. We are going to start doing these once a month again. Tomorrow, I believe Uncle Kage is having his wineless wine stream. So please go catch that. He goes on for much longer than me, but I always say, unless we're really on a roll, 2 hours is the length of a movie, so 2 hours is about as long as I should ask people to watch me. So, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, the parting glass. Of all the money that I had, I spent it in good company, and of all the harm that I done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away. And of all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. And since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, well, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. Folks, once again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for inviting me into your home, and thank you for coming into mine. I can't wait to see you all again in person on the other end of this, and I hope you'll join me again next month for another Front Porch Stream. Until then, I'm Boozy, and you have a wonderful evening. Good night.